Okay, a very, very warm welcome to this, the latest, I think it might be the 10th, Compassion Check-in. And today our theme is inclusion and support. We were toying whether we would do inclusion, whether we do support, but they actually do interrelate. So we thought we'd bring them together today. And I'm going to invite the lovely people who we have got here today to very, very briefly, just in a sentence, just a very, very quick sentence, if you just introduce yourselves here. And we had a couple of requests. Somebody was saying, Frank, you're always looking down at us. They're wondering if there's a way you could arrange your cameras. So you've got fans, Frank. And also Darren, who's not here, has got fans saying, Darren, what's the lighting doing? And all the rest of that. But let's start off at the top. Aleksandra, if you want to kick off by just telling us in a sentence who you are.
I am Aleksandra. I am originally from Croatia and I teach yoga and meditation, and my background is in journalism.
Wonderful. That's really, really good. Let's zoom across to Dr. Martin.
Good afternoon, Dr. Martin Patrick. My work is employability and internships for graduate students. So I spend a lot of my time with the staff training international students how to go about getting internships in the UK.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And let's jump across to Rob Neal, OBE.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lots of love. My name's Rob. I'm a civil servant for the most part. I also run a business called Crystal Alliance, learning, development, inclusion and diversity. I'm a father of two, Rianne and Josh, a daughter and a son, and I'm married to Donna.
Fantastic. And across to Iris.
Hi, everybody. I am Iris Griffiths, or Iris, actually. That's my name. And I run a market research consultancy specialized in Latin America, international research projects, and I am also a conference interpreter. But I want to do something else.
Wonderful. Love it. And across to Dan.
Hi everybody, I'm Danny. I'm on the south coast in Bournemouth, and I'm a barber by trade, so I cut hair for a living, not so much at the minute. And I'm here just to grow and learn and to meet and connect with fellow people that have similar interests.
And Debbie, over to you. And I think that you're speaking to us from South Africa, so over to you.
Unmute yourself, Debbie.
Oh yeah, you just need to unmute yourself. So you'll just see along the bottom there's an unmute.
Got you. And everybody hear me? That's better? Okay, yeah. Hello everybody. From a very, very chilly and cold South Africa. It's about 2 to 3 degrees today, so it's a really, really cold but sunny day here. I'm very, very happy to join you on this platform. Thank you to Leigh for the invitation. I run a non-profit organization along with my mom called Slovo Center of Excellence. And we really run a toy library which services children from very underprivileged backgrounds within our community. So really giving children access to toys, games, play, skills development, life skills, that sort of space. Wonderful. And then, yeah, I'm sort of trying to develop a brand, I would say, towards social entrepreneurship, where we can find sustainable ways to impact our communities, but also recognizing the importance of being able to earn in that space.
Wonderful, Debs. And just one thing to say, if you can, I wonder if you can turn up the volume just a bit. So you run a toy library and it's all around sustainable entrepreneurship. And we're just so welcome you're there warming things up from a chilly South Africa. Across to Leigh in Europe, right? Tell us, Leigh, you want just to unmute yourself.
Hi. I am calling from Spain at the moment. I know Rasheed from the UK. We help to organize Rasheed's retreats for soul traders. Yeah, there we go. And we, by nature, I've always been involved in a lot of entrepreneurial endeavors, but mostly working with nonprofits or with service, with voluntary services, working with refugees in Asia, a whole lot of different things, but mainly now just focusing to help and serve and support however I can. So it's a privilege to be here.
Wonderful. And Paul Deemer, your first time here. I'm so glad you're here, Paul, especially given our theme around support and inclusion. Over to you if you want to briefly introduce yourself.
Thanks, Rasheed. Hi, everybody. So my name's Paul. I am a human resources professional and aspiring poet. And I work within the NHS trying to help organisations create good places for people to work.
Yeah. And I think that the word inclusion is in your title, am I right?
It is.
Yeah. So is it Head of Diversity and Inclusion at NHS Employers?
That's correct, Rasheed. Thank you.
So Paul, get ready. I think I might come to you first once we start, beginning to unpack what this thing about support and inclusion means. It will be lovely to hear from you because I'd imagine that you're there supporting all sorts of people. So just a quick heads up that I'm probably going to come to you. And first over to Frank.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Frank Munro. I'm a civil servant. I work for the Ministry of Justice, where I'm a campaign manager. I'm married, I have a son, and all three of us are civil servants.
Excellent. Wow, fantastic. And then Justin, I'm loving that from wherever you are with that wonderful virtual background. Of course, we know already what you do. We know that we're in the presence of a yoga master, right? Because of the background. Justin, over to you.
Hi, so my name's Justin and I'm the other half of team Leigh and Justin. I'm calling from the other room in Spain. I'm an IT professional, but I'm also a yoga and meditation teacher. So, kind of by day or by weekday, I, set up IT systems in the company I work with. But I also teach yoga and meditation for the staff there, and I run retreats and classes on yoga and meditation. And my background is very much service in the community for people to have self-development and to benefit and develop themselves.
Wonderful. And Aline, welcome. You're joining us for the first time too. So let's give Aline a warm wave as well.
Hello.
Aline, if you just want to briefly, in a sentence or so, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, I am. I was invited by my friend Iris to participate. Thank you, Iris. And I am in Barcelona. I think there is somebody else in Barcelona too, huh? Yeah, Iris mentioned this. Hi, Aleksandra. Yes, and to start with, I'm a physical therapist, but I work with Chinese medicine and martial arts. I basically heal myself. When I was 20 years old, I was in really, really bad shape, and I've been developing, working, practicing, and teaching people how to, juice it up, how to get in touch with this fountain of energy we have inside the body. And I work with people that, most of all people with psychosomatic diseases, but also ordinary people that are like flat batteries, are a little lost, don't know how to connect the soul with the body, like through developing, through generating energy in the body. So I am, that's what I do. I work one-to-one, I teach classes too. Yes, that's what I do.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to turn, we've got two more people. Welcome for the first time, Maya. I think you're joining us for the first time. Dr. Barbara, you're on the call, but you might be driving. I don't know if you want to say a quick hello, if you can. It would be lovely to hear your wonderful voice if you're there. Oh, you might not be able to unmute, in which case I'll let you, if you do want to unmute at any point in time. But if
Hi, Rasheed. Hi, yes, I'm very serious.
Let's wave to Dr. Barbara, who got...
Hi, yeah, sorry for that, half participants, but I thought I would love to hear what you're talking about today, so that's why I'm here. So I'm a little bit about myself. I'm a doctor, a medical doctor specializing in aesthetic, and I have a practice in central London, but I'm really interested in healing through beauty and through connecting with our identity of us as a human being. So I've been working with Rasheed for many, many years, and he helped me to steer my practice and my career into that direction. And as well, I've just published last year a book about bathing and culture of bath in holistic self-care. So that's who I am. Thank you.
I didn't, as far as the business is concerned, I didn't think you need much help from me because you're already running a very successful business in the heart of London. But it's been a pleasure to be a little bit of a help along the way. and Maya, do you want to just very briefly, in a sentence or so, introduce yourself, and everyone wave to Maya? I think it's your first time here.
Hi there. Yeah, it is my first time here actually. Aleksandra, who's also on the call, recommended today. So my background is I'm new to the whole area of health and well-being, and it's something I'd like to learn more about and work in. So I'm just starting out on that journey to see, you know, what's the best fit for me, and yeah, just really learn from other people who currently work in the industry, what you're doing, where the needs are. But yeah, I've got a strong leaning towards holistic healthcare. I currently practice yoga and meditation, and I'd like to see how I could better serve the community with the techniques that I've been learning as a student, and just continue to learn myself every day.
Fantastic. It's really interesting that blend of people we've got on this call today, because what suddenly struck me as we were talking, we've got this really interesting blend between people who help and support people in different ways. Some very, very practically, you know, they're practitioners, be it in civil service and organizations, helping training and developing people. And then you've got the other people who are very much healers in the other sense, isn't it? They're healers, they're well-being practitioners and so on. And then we've got this lovely space in the middle about those people, is about sustainability and so on. I'd asked you to put in here where you wanted us to start, whether it was about support and inclusion. I think we've had a bit of a mix. The word that jumps out to me is actually support. And I just want to say, for me, just before I am going to turn to you, Paul, partly because the reason I want to put you on the spot, first of all, Paul, with this is that I'd imagine that on the face of it, you've got a huge job, right? You're head of diversity inclusion for NHS employers. And the NHS, as I understand it, somebody once told me, is the second largest employer in the world. I don't know if that's still true after the Red Army. Is that true? Is that away from Rob? Rob's giving a bit. So
Fifth highest.
Right, sorry?
Fifth.
So actually, I'm going to throw it straight over to you. So support and inclusion, to you, what's that all about? And I'd imagine that it's a huge ask, right? I'd love to just know your thoughts and your feelings to kick us off.
Yeah. Thank you, Rasheed. Fifth largest employer, the NHS in the world, behind the Red Army, the Indian Railway, Walmart, I think, and one other, which I can't remember off the top of my head. But thank you. You're right. And so just to give people an example of my world, so I spent this morning, you will have heard in the UK that we've had a disproportionate effect of COVID on Black, Asian and minority ethnic staff, particularly within our workforce. So I've spent most of this morning talking with various people and policy leads around devising the next iteration of risk assessment guidance to help support staff who are on the front line, basically, helping us to fight the COVID virus. So, and it's really interesting, as Rasheed said, because at one level you're working at a very high policy level, and then at another level, you know, you're putting words into a document which are very human words, you know, things like psychological safety, mental health, health and well-being, you know, and so you're trying to think about how, well, I am anyway, how do those words, how are those words going to filter down through the system to those frontline staff in terms of actual practice. So that's where I'm at the moment, really. And it's very real. And colleagues we've had lots of conversations within the NHS about the impact, particularly on Black, Asian, minority ethnic staff. And colleagues, I think the most useful and helpful descriptor is that they say, they call it personal. They say, you know, this is personal, because it's about not just about them, but also about their families as well, and the impact on their families and their communities. So a conversation about inclusion and support is absolutely relevant for me at the moment, Rasheed.
Really, really interesting. I'm just soaking up what you're saying, and I just wonder if anyone wants to come in. I was going to direct in a certain way, but I just want it to just kind of flow wherever anyone's drawn to this thing about support or inclusion. For me, the word support, for me, I just say where I feel, for me, support is the first word that comes to me right now at this very moment, first of all. And I think the reason is that I was just thinking about this yesterday, and I thought that from the moment that we arrive, the next thing that's happened is a baby is cradled and that they're supported. And however we look at it in life, that there'll be certain moments where we need support. So that's my first thought about support. And during a crisis like this, we realize that we all need to support each other, right? Because we're in, and I think somebody put this in the thread here, that we are interdependent, that we are codependent, we need to support each other. But then we've got this other thread around inclusion, and I'll just share this and then I want to open it up, is that I was thinking about today, and I suddenly thought about a few people who I wanted to invite to join the call. Paul was one, because these people had roles around diversity and inclusion. And I suddenly thought about a couple of people I know, and somebody I know who does a lot of work. In fact, they head up a disability network within an organization. And I suddenly thought to myself, hang on a minute, is these sessions, how inclusive are they? How easy would it be for somebody? And I had a chat with somebody else I'd invited, and there was a thing about how they would access things. So there is something for me about this thing about inclusion on so many different levels. Who's in the room? Who's not in the room? This thing around inclusion. Anyone want to just jump in? This is, as we know, it's a dance. Anyone want to jump in and share anything? Who have we got next? Mia Morris is just arriving. Anyone want to kick in? Otherwise, I'm going to turn to you, Rob, because again, a lot of your work is around inclusion, and I've got a couple of things to include from people who weren't able to make it here today. But Rob, I wonder if you might tell us a little bit of word about this word inclusion then. What does inclusion mean to you?
Sure. Thank you for that, Rash. Can I start with a hello to Paul Deemer? Bumped into Paul a couple of times. And it's funny, when we started off, I looked at the face and I thought, I recognize that person. And then I saw the name, and then, you know, the thing the brain does, trying to match the name with the face. And anyway, hi, Paul. Enough love. Lots of respect. As is my habit with the compassion check-ins, Rash, I wait until I arrive. I soak up what I soak up. And I just write down. And here's what I've written down around inclusion. So this isn't necessarily from anything I've written previously or what I may have studied and continue to study. I put down, in no particular order, inclusion. I've said inclusion is a choice. Inclusion is a path to our heart. Inclusion is a reflection of our willingness to share. Inclusion is how our hearts hug. Inclusion is acknowledgement. Inclusion is respectful. And that's just what I've jotted down based on what I felt emanating from the screen, what's in my own heart. I think it's the arms we grow from our heart and extend to the world around us. It's the way in which we connect. And I think inclusion and the extent to which organizations lead and develop in an inclusive way is about our ability to do those things. I think we often hear about inclusion juxtapose diversity. And I think that whether it's diversity and inclusion and diversity, whichever way round you want to put it, if you read Stephen Frost's book, The Inclusion Imperative, he talks about we cannot truly deliver on diversity until we are an inclusive environment, until we are an inclusive culture. And I think there's something in that, and I think there's something that chimes with me about that. But I think diversity and inclusion are bound to work together. I think diversity are the schools and the doors. I think diversity are the optics. I think the measure of diversity is something we can get our head around relatively easily. I think there are still some organizations who do it very well and some organizations who don't do it so well. But I think whereas diversity is a fact and a measurement, I think inclusion is a choice. And I think our ability to say good morning, to inquire how we're getting on, to understand and read each other's hearts is all about inclusion. And that's how I arrive at this topic.
And as you were speaking there, I was very drawn to our friends here from South Africa. I mean, there's a few things that jump out to me very, very powerfully. I think, Leigh and Justin, one of the things that I really admire about the work that you do in your hearts is that you're always mindful about inclusion, and you're always mindful about how's this person getting on, how's that person getting on. And it's wonderful that, Debs, we've got you here today. And I wanted to ask you, I want to turn to you first, because you're calling us from a country that's had to learn a lot about inclusion. And I get the feeling that your work is about trying to include. Tell me, what does these things, support and inclusion, mean to you personally and professionally?
Yeah, I think it's such a broad and fascinating topic structure, because it's a hot topic in South Africa at the moment, the word inclusion, and it really stems from, for us at the moment in the non-profit space or in the civil society space, is including the disabled and marginalized communities. Those are two specific areas that come to mind when I think of the word inclusion in our context. And we've actually been through a process over the last couple of years where we've actually changed the word disabled into differently abled, which really starts to lend itself to a broader array of abilities versus non-abilities, however you want to sort of look at that. But it's definitely something that is very important and becoming more and more important as we work our way through the COVID-19 pandemic. And we've had some really great opportunities and seen some incredible spaces for inclusion. And then we've seen some really harsh stories coming through where those things are not practiced at all in our day-to-day Ubuntu sort of culture that we sort of are known for throughout the world. And I think one of the really interesting things for me with inclusion is starting to lean also towards the LGBTQ community. That's also starting to become part of the conversation when we speak about inclusion. So it's really taking broad marginalized communities and starting to involve them or us in more conversations and decision making and planning and strategy and all of that to sort of narrow the gap of what some of our big challenges are in South Africa, one of the main ones being poverty.
Well, thank you so much for that. Anyone want to jump in here? And I'm wondering if anyone's ever felt that. Danny, and then I'm going to turn to Martin. Yeah, please.
I just want to jump in actually there with just what Debbie was ending with about poverty. And for me, inclusion, it is definitely... I noticed that there's a big divide with including people that perhaps come from different social backgrounds and demographics, almost as much as our diversity in culture and religion and all these sort of things. But for me, that is something I also want to just add as well. I wish we didn't have to talk about inclusion. So it's quite perhaps a naive way of looking at it, but I wish we could just sort of not have to think about it on this level, because it's something that from an ethics point of view, we should all just be living to our best ability of including everybody, just because, not for this or that or whatever. But then when it goes on to what Paul was mentioning at the beginning, it's hard to, when you have a specific demographic that perhaps is excluded, because of a particular makeup, we have to include them into the best ways to help them and to support them, that they are still included, even though perhaps their makeup is meaning that they're having difficulties or finding difficulties in life.
There were two hands. Dr. Martin was going to say something, and Aleksandra was going to say something here. Dr. Martin.
Thank you. To me, one of the things about the idea, the concept, the notion of inclusion is that you actually have to address your own preconceptions. Because inclusion, to me, I spent a great deal of research in this area in cultural anthropology. Inclusion actually starts with asking yourself about the people you exclude, the people that you feel that you are not connected to or have no affinity to you, whether it's kinship or whether it's a social status. So when we talk about inclusion, to me, it's not something amorphous, and it's not something that's specifically a classification of a group. To me, inclusion starts with who, how, and why do you have the preconceptions that you have about the world that we live in, the people who occupy space with us. Why are they to be excluded and why are they to be included? So addressing your own preconceptions about the notions that we live in. I won't say truths, because that's precisely why you're actually addressing that concept of inclusion. But when you actually overcome, address it, think through it, work through it, and then come to a consciousness of inclusion, that is when you become very powerful. I've seen that in many, many different areas of work, in social life, as well as in personal acceptance about who, how, and why you are the person you are and the people that you draw to you. So to me, inclusion is very much about addressing your own perception and preconceptions of the word and overcoming the prejudices that you may have.
I like that. I'm going to turn to Aleksandra. And Aleksandra, just before I turn to you, you've just reminded me, Dr. Martin, of an experience I had a while ago. I'd been asked to do a particular piece of work, and I asked a couple of colleagues who I knew, both who had different disabilities, about this thing, and I wanted to just talk to them and just chat to them. They came along to one of my workshops, and they pointed out to me, it was a networking workshop I had back in the days where pre-social distancing, and I had people sat in rows and so on, and they pointed out to me two things. One said, look, the way you've got these chairs, one has a visual disability. I can't see everybody easily, how these chairs are laid out. The other pointed out that during the networking time, guess what? Most of the able people were stood up. And they pointed out to me something I hadn't even thought about, that straight away, the way that I'd set the event up, or the event had been set up, really disenfranchised those people. And it was a real wake-up call for me. So I think what you're saying there is really, really powerful, that sometimes we've got to look at, you know, what's the starting point that I start with. Aleksandra, you wanted to share and add.
Yes, I can just then continue with Dr. Martin said, because as a journalist, like for 15 years, I try to educate and inform people about needs to include everybody and how we are all the same. And then I just kind of had to give it up, because it's so difficult to educate people if they haven't healed themselves, if they haven't included their own negative tendencies, negative opinions. So this is when I started to heal myself, and I went to free retreat. I did I went out of the normal life, and I just meditated and tried first to heal it in myself, to include really, truly all my habits and all my tendencies and all my stereotypes and prejudices and preconceptions and judgmental mind. So I thought, if I can do that and embody that, then it will be easier to talk about it or transmit it or teach somebody else how to do it. So I think it's like to personalize it. Inclusion is really like about discovering that in yourself, heal it, and then help others to heal, because I think nobody can support other people or include other people unless they included all the segments of their inner soul first and healed.
Thanks. And I could hear people that umming with that. And I was thinking, the word that came to my mind there is pain. Because actually, and I'm picking up on the thing that Dr. Martin talked about then, that exclusion bit. often that means that actually then we've got to face all sorts of things, injustice, pain, suffering, and those things become really loaded in all sorts of ways, be it that's happened in our family, between communities that you've experienced, and so on. And it becomes very, very loaded, doesn't it? And then I like this very personal point about it that you point us to, Aleksandra. Then it means that we've got to, again, go on this journey again, as Dr. Martin had pointed us to. Yeah, please, Maya, you've got your hand up. Let's please.
Hi. Yeah, I've also been thinking about the word inclusion and just thinking in general about what it means to me, and using myself as an example. And so I think linked to what Aleksandra has said, I would agree that inclusion, or a true understanding of inclusion, starts from within and from self, and specifically from identity, and just each and every one of us individually understanding and accepting our identity as it is, and actually as it morphs and changes, because I think inclusion is as fluid as our identity is and our lives are. But a few words that come to mind for me are love and acceptance. Both love and acceptance of who each and every one of us is as individuals. And that kind of is to maybe acknowledge that there may be certain things that are painful, and with reference to what you said, may be a bit more loaded and more difficult to deal with. But if your starting point is always love and acceptance, or if you're rooted in with those two themes of love and acceptance of yourself as a human, then I think with those two values, it's possible to emanate them and share those values and that energy with everyone around you, if you truly embody love and acceptance. Because I think we all look externally and we think, oh, there are problems that need to be fixed, but we don't actually, and I don't want to use the word problem because actually I think that's negative, but we all look at challenges and think, oh, what is the solution? But perhaps actually the solution sits within each of us. Like if we can each and individually be more loving and more accepting of ourselves for whatever we are at this point in time, then it enables growth, and it actually opens us up to diversity, because we acknowledge that we can be more diverse individuals. Like we don't need to necessarily attach ourselves to particular labels. And I'm on this personal journey myself where I've had a particular profession, and I've now decided actually it's not serving my needs. So I trained as an accountant, but I felt actually that I was very attached to that label of, oh, this is part of my identity. And through my experience of just actually challenging that, just pausing, stopping and challenging that in a loving way, being kind to myself in the process, I think I've got a much, I'm pushing boundaries in a way that I haven't before. So again, starting from within, and I think if we can challenge linked to what Dr. Martin said, if we can challenge our own preconceptions, because we all have them, and sometimes they're just individual thoughts that might drop into your head within seconds, and then suddenly are there with you for the next 20 years. I think if we can challenge preconceptions within, it can also help us, collectively to be more open and have less boundaries externally as well as internally.
Thank you so much. And I was just thinking, as you were saying that, I was just thinking about how does one get to that place? How do I get to that place? Especially if, that thing about identity, if I've been made to feel my whole life as though I have no value, or what happens if I am, how do I begin that journey? What happens if I'm not in that room? What happens for those people who aren't in the room where these conversations are had? Dr. Martin, I could see you had your
One of the things, you know, you live and decade after decade after decade, and, you know, you get to your 60s, and one of the things that you do discover is that you become very flexible. You can become very flexible. And I've shifted from a position of what I would call academic arrogance to something that's far more along the lines of humanitarianism and being understanding with people that I used to be very impatient with. And when, for example, to Maya, to just tag on to what you were saying, it's when you come face to face or you're dealing with people who are not that evolved, you know, they don't understand or they don't accept difference, they don't understand inclusion. And one of the ways I found of helping to shift the paradigm just a little bit is when somebody makes certain sorts of statements and then say, you know, well, do you know what I mean? Or do you understand what I'm saying? And then if I have said to them, you know, I used to think that way, and then I discovered how damaging it was for me or for the people that were being referred to. And by actually saying, I used to think that way, or I held those beliefs, or I understand the mindset, but I shifted away from that because of its damaging effects, I found that people would actually listen to what I was saying. And it wasn't that you were scolding them, you were actually alerting them to the fact that there's something very debilitating or dangerous about this mindset, and to raise the consciousness by actually saying something's changed through my own shift as well as people that I know. And I found that very effective in moving past someone who holds values that are quite different from my own.
I think that's a really important point, isn't it? Because so it sounds as though there's this inner work that I need to do to look at who I am and where I am at and how I'm showing up and how I treat people and so on. But it doesn't stop there. I've got a responsibility in what I hear in the society in which I'm in. Frank, we've not heard from you so far. I wonder if there's anything you're wanting to share here, either about inclusion where we are at the moment, and I'm sure we'll shift and pick up on this thread about support. So I want to turn to Frank, and I want to turn to Justin. Oh, you are on mute. You're on mute.
Right. I normally make more sense when I'm on mute. Yeah. I think they're actually natural and complementary partners, because I think you can't have one without the other, and it very much depends on where you are in that continuum. I think inclusion for me is about extending that hand of support and bringing people with you, and making sure that you're also aware of your biases and the things that make you uncomfortable, and ensuring that you're in that space yourself to come across as more welcoming and embracing.
I really like that a lot. I really like that. There's something very humbling about that. I like that a lot. Justin.
Okay, so I'm not really sure I can add anything to this since everybody has really covered everything so nicely. But maybe I'd like to just touch on the last point that Frank also brought up, which is what I wanted to say also, that inclusion and support are very much should go hand in hand, so that we're not doing inclusion just for the sake of it, because it's really just some sort of activity. That's something that we really support others. You know, we wish to really wholeheartedly, you know, bring others up. And I think a lot of that should really come from a sense of, or to make it wholehearted and to make it really genuine, should come from a sense of deep self-honesty and understanding that just as I wish so and so and so, others also want this. You know, some people, you know, often coming from a point of privilege, seem to be immune or blind to the plight of others because they don't experience what it's like to be excluded. But actually, if they were just a little could shine that light in on themselves and see that actually, even from a point of privilege, you know that you don't want to be excluded. Even from a point of privilege, you know that you want to be treated with respect, or you want to be given an equal opportunity, or you would like the support you need to do what you need. And I think that is a very important point for people to understand that, just with a little bit of looking inward, we can become inclusive, and it'll be a natural inclusivity. And that will also go a very long way to extending the support. It's not always easy to know what others need, without directly asking them or knowing a lot of detail. But on a kind of a blanket level, we know that just as I need something, I should extend that courtesy or that hand or that feeling of kindness to others.
That's really beautiful points. I think really, really powerful. And I felt that there in the heart. I think that this stuff, it's got to be genuine. I love the phrase that I just want to share with you. What's been in my conscious psyche a lot over the last, and my consciousness and my being over the last few weeks. That saying when people say, can you find the room in your heart? It's deep. Have you got the room in your heart? Because often the fact is that we don't have the room in our heart for others. We don't have that room. We just don't have that room. Welcome, Beverley Powell. Beverley, we've been having a chat. So let's wave to Beverley, everybody. Beverley, we've been having a chat about inclusion and support. And I know that your career, and from the bits I can remember about it, I'm now putting myself on the spot, but you've worked for a number of organisations, from the police. I think you worked in the justice system. You worked in the NHS. And one of the things I really love about the work that you do is a lot of the work is around developing communities and actually supporting those leaders and so on. And whilst you haven't heard the conversation as it's gone on so far, Beverley, I wonder if you might be able to link us between, we've been talking a lot about inclusion on a personal level and the barriers to inclusion. I wonder if you might say a little bit about, well, anything that you might want to share, but support. I mean, one of the things that really strikes me is that you care about inclusion, but you get that it's important to support people, right? There's something that you genuinely do, you personally do. Can you tell me a bit about, I'd love to hear your own personal take. What I'm asking, I think, is for your own personal take around this inclusion and support. And I think that you really recognize that actually genuinely support, and it's more than support, empowering people or letting them see the power they already have is really important. Anything you want to share would be most welcome here. And you just have to unmute yourself and tell people in a sentence what you do. And I know I've put you on the spot, but if you just tell people in a sentence what you do, and over to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much, Rasheed, for the invitation. And my apologies, everybody, for the very, very late dialing. So my name is Beverley Powell. I'm a transformational leadership coach. I, in the main, support staff networks and others out in the community who want to engage. And there's something really important around connecting systems together. So my key thing is about understanding the world that we operate in as a system and the wider systems, and how can we make those connections together. So I guess I'm largely driven, or what's really shined for me over the years has been the importance of having a voice. So over the years, lots of well-meaning people have spoken on my behalf and told my story. And I guess this is why I got into academia, wanting to understand self, my history, the world in which I operate in. And there was something really important about that. And therefore, there's something about understanding self, understanding where I am, where I sit as a system and as a wider system, and understanding that we can operate on different levels. So my work involved doing a lot of work in the local community and engaging into wider systems, because there've been lots of disconnect. But I've often felt, before I've been able to do that, there's something about me understanding myself, and there's something more about evolving. So over the years, Beverley Powell is a different person to how she is today, because I've evolved and working in a different system. But what I've been able to do, hopefully, is to empower and bring others along by sharing my experiences, having operated in different systems, and engage. So ultimately, I guess my vision is for us all to operate in one world. I'm not a fan of this third world. I don't believe there's a third world. There is one world. There's no third world. And I think we should all operate within that system. But there's a lot of unpicking. It's like an onion, unraveling. Who are we? What are we about? What is the system we're operating in? And I guess that's my view on the world, I guess, in terms of that. What comes with that, I guess, is inclusion and diversity, because not all of us can engage on this level. So it's understanding the world of somebody with a disability, somebody who's operating, who is transitioned. I did a big piece of research around the transgender patient access in primary care. And that was a whole piece of work to understand the world in which some patients operate in and the system that I operate in, and why is there a disconnect and health inequalities. And also developing and supporting staff networks, which is my real passion, because if we can develop a wider staff network within a system, it's really transformational. It can be really dynamic.
What you're saying there is music. It's heartening music. I think what you've said there is, with such a consciousness, that it's so important that we do look at all of these systems, and of course anyone who's involved in systems, to really ask themselves some really tough questions about that systems. Who created it? Who's it for? How is it shaped? Who's in the room? Who's not in the room? I want us to briefly break into breakout groups to have a little bit of a discussion. But before we do, Iris, I want to turn to you. I wonder if there's anything that you'll say. I wonder if you'll say a word about this for us. I'm very, very conscious that sometimes there are actual physical factors that mean that I cannot engage. And I think that often we in organizations and all the time forget that. I wonder if there's anything you want to say about that, particularly when it comes to our abilities, our physical ability, or the barriers that we experience in society. Is there anything you will say about that very briefly before we can hopefully break into groups? And yeah, anything you might want to say or share?
Well, I think the most powerful thing that has occurred...
so sorry, Beverley. I was just going to turn to Iris, but on that. But I'll take 30 seconds from you, and I'm going to turn from Iris. No, do finish that point. I'm going to turn to Iris afterwards. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that we're all affected in the way that we engage and communicate. So whichever way we communicate historically, we're never going to go back to that way again. So there's something about creativity and innovation and thinking as a collective, how do we go forward? Right. So clearly that's old news, and I'm in the new world of how we can engage more effectively and embrace everybody.
I like that, because then I'm going to go to Iris and you're going to go into your breakout groups, and that's going to be the challenge. How can we now show up in the new world with more of a sense of this? Iris, over to you, my friend.
Well, I think that everybody really covered quite a lot of what I think. On a personal level, I really try to get the balance right between excluding myself from groups, consciously excluding myself from groups or ideas that I think that is not going to help me, to be more inclusive. And sometimes I do err on that. I do get mistakes, because then I have to check if I'm excluding myself for positive aim, or if I am just being prejudiced. And that, I think that some of you touched upon that. And I try, the inclusive thing, I just try to embrace it in my life. Like with my work, we all talk about inclusiveness and all that sort of thing, but for example, with technology that we are able to use, I am working in some countries that people, because of their age, they do not have access to the technology, and they won't have access. But we need to hear from their experiences. And this week, working with in some projects in Brazil, I am noticing that it's difficult for me to talk with someone that is 65 years old that never used technology, and I want to hear from him so I can include his views of the world. And so, and when I try to discuss that with other people, most of them come with the solution, well, we can just, you know, go over that and concentrate on the ones that can speak. So inclusiveness for me and being inclusive is about, well, I cannot change the world, but if I change at least the people that I have contact with, perhaps I will create a wave.
I love it. And I can hear Rob Neal OBE's voice in so many things he posts. Are constantly involved to evolve. On that note, what I want to invite you to do, I'm going to send you into 2 breakout groups. And I just want to invite you to share, how is it that you feel that, it's going to be very, very brief, but either, how is it that you can play a supportive role? How is it that you can include, or some of you might even be wanting to share, actually, this is the support that I'm looking for. Any of those things, but just very briefly from your heart, if you'll be happy to share in your groups. Are you up for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the rooms are open now. So if you want to click into your room, I'm going to give you just 4 minutes. So it's going to be very, very brief. It's going to be about 30 seconds each person. Okay, brilliant.
Rasheed, sorry, I'm going to have to leave, I'm afraid.
Oh, no problem, Paul. It's been so good you being with us, and I really do hope you can join us again. Thank you so, so much.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry I can't stay. I've got to finish that policy document for tomorrow, I'm afraid.
Oh, good luck. Well, I hope this was useful. I hope it just sparked a few.
It has. It has. It really has.
Oh, really, really good.
Bye, Aline.
Bye, Aline. So, Aline and Mia, you should have, it should be showing up, join the room. So it should give you an option on your screen, Aline, to join a room. And Dr. B, I think you're with me, you may not have that option. So you can either join a room or you can chat to the coach. So Aline, I don't know if you can see your option to join the room. It should be showing up. Amir, I don't know if you're in one of the rooms already. So you're right there, Aline? Oh, you're on mute. If you just want to unmute yourself. So it should be showing on your computer. It should say join room. Or otherwise, if you unmute, I can direct you. Oh, if you want to unmute.
I mute, yeah.
Yeah, so Aline, was it showing up on your computer? It should say join room. Are you on a computer? It should be saying.
I am the computer, yeah.
Ah, let me see if I can, let me then see if I can get you to join. So it should on your screen say to join a room. Let me just see if I can do that. Let me see if I can do that manually. Put in a waiting room. Let me see if I can add you to a room. Aline, join, move to, I'm going to move you to breakout room 2. Hopefully see you there soon. And Dr. B, how are you doing? If you want to unmute. Okay, and Aline, I think I've moved you.
Hello, hello.
Hey, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. It's very interesting.
It is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, really like it.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's really intriguing, really intriguing. It's fascinating and it's so layered. It's so layered, the stuff that we're talking about today.
Yeah.
It's layered, and everyone's experience will be different. But it's so great that people are just exploring and sharing. And just whilst we're here, I think I'm going to read. So sorry that it didn't let you into breakout room, Aline. But
oh, no, that's all right. That's okay.
That's fine. We were just having a conversation here with yourself and Dr. Barbara. We were just saying that conversation's fascinating, and I was just saying that it's so.
Back here, I don't know how.
Yeah. So, no, that's okay. It's okay. Everyone will come back to us soon, so that will be absolutely fine. We were just sharing, myself and Dr. Barbara here were just sharing, the conversation's been so interesting. So many different people with different kind of perspectives on this.
And that's where the 2 dimension of it, the global or personal.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the fact that, yeah, some we have different roles in life, and some people's role is to make it, in a form of law, policies, and organizations. And it's great, it's important, but for others, the important thing is the interpersonal, or on the much smaller, on a smaller level, but on a deeper level. So it very much depends on our roles, and both of them are very important.
So true.
And there will be different things that we will kind of see, because all of us can feel excluded at times, and I think it's obvious to say about things that whether the specific groups or specific issues that might exclude people, whether it's mental health or whether it's sexual or transgender, and all of that. Yes, it's true, but then there are other more subtle ways, and people are isolated regardless of being fairly normal.
I loved what you were saying there about, there's so many things you were saying that were interesting, that you know, but I love this really powerful but simple point you make about, I guess it depends where the person is, whether they're focusing on this on an individual level, because you know what, there are things I'm being excluded or I need to address X or Y, or whether it's relevant for them at a more higher level in their organization and so on. And I think what's powerful about what you're saying is if we were able to just stop and even think about that, that might help us. You know, I think that mere pause and thinking, okay, where are you at right now? Is this something that you need to really think about personally? It might be that, you know what, I'm okay right now, so I don't need to think about this personally. Then, okay, where are you at in those different rooms that you are, in your family or in your friendships or in your organization? I think it's very powerful what you're saying. I'm just telling everyone that I'm closing their meeting rooms.
Okay.
So they're all about to come back. But that's fascinating in itself. I think I might share that with the group.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, everyone's just on their way back.
Yeah.
And whilst they're on
everything starts from oneself, isn't it? We all, I mean, the balance starts from within and from oneself, I think. In my personal opinion, one of the greatest thing happened to me was when I felt prejudiced against myself. I think is a very powerful thing to go through, even though it's as unpleasant as it is. Just sharing with you. When I first moved to England, back in the 90s, I was working in a pub, and a guy asked me, you know, if I was there because I'm Brazilian. An old man asked me, "Are you here to get married with a rich man?" He asked me, and for me it was like, wow, you know, someone had prejudice against me, and it was one of the most powerful things I've been through, actually, because something shifting me when I felt that, and you know that, yeah.
I mean, we're just rejoining you all, and I heard that, and I just want to say, oh my God.
Yeah. When I was just sharing how much impact they had in me, because I thought that I was open-minded, and you know, I didn't have prejudice, but by feeling that against me, it helped me to see the world differently. It was really, really powerful thing to go through.
It's powerful. It links to the point that I think that where Dr. Martin had, have we only got one breakout group? Is everybody here? Is everyone back? Or have we got both?
I'm back from breakout 2.
Okay, breakout group 1, are you here? Are they back here? Let me just close all breakout rooms. Is all the breakout rooms, everyone back? Let's just check.
Yeah, I think that's us.
We're all here. Okay, fine. I was worried that some people were lost in cyberspace, but it links us to things that Martin kicked us off with. But I think that sometimes, until we've experienced being excluded, sometimes it's just that, it's the moment when we've been excluded, suddenly, that we can realize this thing about inclusion. It makes me think about something that Danny was also saying. So I think that's, I guess the one useful thing is about that, however unpleasant that was, it suddenly wakes us up. And Dr. Barbara, I wonder if you'll be happy to share, just before we hear briefly back from the groups, you just said a point there that I think would be lovely to hear you say. You made just a really interesting point about this stuff around inclusion. I wonder if you'll be happy to share it with the group.
Yeah, I would love to. the fact that the inclusion is happening on different levels, and some of us have a role on the bigger scale, where whether it's organization, whether are government bodies, whether there are support groups, and then we have as well the individual level, where it's on the deeper connection with the person, and that exclusion is about accepting another person as they are, in a completeness, how they are, with their darkness, and we all feel excluded in some times, and it doesn't have to be a big reason. And I love the example that's just been discussed, because it has a powerful impact, even if it's a simple theoretically thing, but sort of makes us more compassionate towards those who suffer on a bigger scale because of it. So I think it's very important to be aware and recognize the role that we play, because in my practice, in my experience, I do work with individuals, and I go quite deep into the connection and role. And yes, it doesn't look like a massive thing from outside, but it's a profound work on their own connection or ability to feel accepted. So yeah, so that was my point. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And I think the thing that jumps out to me from that, Dr. Barbara, is this thing about my personal responsibility and where do I sit? Am I an organization? What's my role? Am I taking that seriously? I'm supposed to be the director of this organ. Am I taking this thing about inclusion seriously? That there's something about here, that personal responsibility. I wonder if we could hear very, very briefly back from each group. I wonder if somebody from each group would be happy to just really briefly, and I don't know if everyone's happy to stay here until 15:15, then it will be good. We can just hear from both groups and wrap up. Anyone from group one just want to just tell us some of the key threads that emerged? And Mia, were you in group one? Because whatever group you were in, I would love you to summarize, because we haven't heard your magical voice so far. So whatever room you were in, Mia, I'm going to turn to you first. If you would just share what you felt were the main things that struck you from your group. Oh, if you want to unmute. Mia Morris, OBE. Let's give her a wave. Yeah.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about the importance of involving to evolve, I think was the main thing I took away from that. And how we can, it's like we give a lot of support to people, but how we indeed reach out for support for ourselves.
Really important. And I'm glad that word support has emerged, because I know it's the word that Leigh uses all the time. Leigh, were you in the other group?
I was in the group as Mia, and it was also just something that Aleksandra said. I think everybody had such a thing so meaningful to add, but I think that thing of remembering that we need to. Often, a lot of people are the givers and the supporters, and these words of invisible givers is very, very true to me. Or the people in the background who never really take energy for themselves or take care for themselves. So I think this kind of thing of, what does each person need to be able to keep on giving? I think to be able to keep on giving support, to sustain that kind of support, I think that's really, really important, because if you're a caring or a giving person, you know how much you want to help others. And then I see other people who are doing that, reflecting that for each other, saying, oh, but you also need help, you also need support. So it becomes this beautiful synergy, a harmonious circle where everybody gives. We're all in a circle from one hand to another, giving support to each other. And I think that's where the real strength comes in. That's real strength and humility.
That's so beautiful. The other group, I want to turn to the other group, but I want to read, just before the other group, whoever you can agree who your spokesperson will be, but I want to read something from Mavelle, who's usually regularly here, so I want to read it before I forget. And she says, thoughts on being Black in a global crisis. COVID-19 caught us off guard, and so none of us were prepared for the level of devastation it would cause. There have been several surprises and adjustments along the way for us. The biggest surprise for me, though, has been the reaction to the underbelly of COVID-19, the race issue. You see, I'm not surprised that there is a race issue as a diversity inclusion practitioner. For many years, I understand that certain demographics within our communities have less than positive experience of life due to deprivation, racism, sexism, and other disparities. No, the surprise to me has been the impact on emotional well-being. When I first reported cases of the virus in the UK, when the first reported cases of the virus in the UK, unfortunately, I wasn't surprised to hear that some BAME healthcare professionals experienced racist comments, especially those of Chinese heritage. I wasn't surprised to hear the latest news that BAME people are 4 times more likely to die of the virus. Well, I was a little more surprised at the number. I thought it might be lower, and by the fact that it isn't necessarily because of the social factors like lower incomes and deprivation. I wasn't even surprised to read of the racism that people of African heritage began to suffer in China as a result of the rhetoric surrounding Black deaths of the virus. It is very sad that I wasn't surprised by such negative behaviors, but that's the truth, because as a Black woman and DNI practitioner, I'm unfortunately all too familiar with some of this behavior. Really, really interesting, isn't it? That sometimes when we're in a system and we see and we're experiencing this, and yet we're trying to kind of balance out some of these disparities. And that's quite powerful. It reinforces the point that Leigh was making about what's the support that some of those people in supporting others, often in most challenging situations, might need. Somebody from the other group, could you just want to share what were the main themes that came through from your group? And that was only part of her email, by the way, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get to hear it all, but it was sobering for me to hear that. Who was in the other group? Come and step forward. Who was in the other group? Who hasn't spoken? Come on, somebody hasn't spoken for a while. Come on, somebody, step up. Who was in the other group?
Dib. No, I'm sitting here having a giggle going, who's it gonna be? I would love to ask Iris if she could maybe just feedback to us on what we chatted about, if that's okay, Iris. Is she still on?
Okay, Iris.
Yes, I think that Rob actually could sum it up, because he put what we talked about here on the side, and he and Frank talked really well. So, and actually I like listening to Rob because he's so clear in the way that he puts our thoughts out there. So I am really a fan. And I just, if he doesn't mind, I would like him to sum up what we talked about.
I'm loving this. I'm loving how we're all...
Our group is playing faster inclusive ball.
Very briefly, Rob, the only caveat is, because you're such a compelling speaker, it's going to have to be very, very brief. Over to you.
One of the promises I make to myself coming on to Compassion Check-In is not to give in to my preference for extroversion and the love of the microphone. And here we are with powerful sisters in our group, wonderfully articulate sisters, Debbie and Iris, and they throw it at me. Incredible.
We're playing past the inclusion ball, Rob. Over to you.
No worries, no worries. I'm happy to take one for the team, Debbie. I'm happy to take one for the team. Absolutely, pure love, pure love. It is very, very quickly, Rasheed. We talked about and highlighted the difference between, and I think you came into it when you brought us back into the main group, Rasheed, the difference between inclusion, and I love what Beverley said about systems and the light she shone on systems, and that we all, operate, live, work, wherever we're working, even if we're between jobs and changing direction in jobs. And, Maya shared from the heart about her wanting to let go of accountancy and move in another direction. It's a wonderful thing that we're all going through this kind of change, this metamorphosis into whatever we were created to be. And we highlighted the difference between inclusion and exclusion. And, and that very often, I think Dr. Martin referred to it at the very beginning with his first offering, that when we start thinking about, pick on any part of the process, recruitment, retention, progression, opportunities in the workplace, all of it hinges on that kind of, are you included or are you excluded? Why are you included? Why are you excluded? Why do some people have a better chance of succeeding in interviews and others already start 5 points down? purely because of a given demographic or a given characteristics that they are perceived or actually have. What is going on in the world of inclusion and exclusion? And I think that when we focus our efforts on those systems and we create systems that offer access and inclusion, we involve to evolve, that's when we begin to produce a better organization, a better lived experience, a richer experience, because we are including all of those voices in what we end up doing. I'll leave you with this thought. For those of us who live and operate in the UK, just think about it. How could a government that reports or presents itself as representing the people, how could a government of the UK population produce a policy such as Windrush? How could that happen were it not for a failure to include voices that represent the people that we serve? How else could that have happened? I just leave it.
Really, really powerful. Really powerful. So powerful this thing about who's doing this, not the inclusion and the exclusion, and to ask ourselves those tough questions. We're coming toward the end of this magical session. There's just a couple of things I wanted to say. One is that, I just wanted to, I'm trying to multitask. I'm a Gemini, so I can do that. It's like, which I've just, sorry. I want to make the theme next week. I know today we're talking about inclusion and support.
Make it what?
I want to make the theme for next week support. I know that our theme for today was inclusion and support, but the reason why I want to make it support is that I think that this thing about support for ourselves, for everybody, is so important right now. I want to carry it on till next week with everyone's permission. Because I think that this thing about how is it that how is it that for this new emerging world that we're going into, how is it that we actually want to call it support and build? You know, that's what the work that you're looking to do, Deb. It's the kind of thing that Leigh, and Justin, you're doing. I want to call the theme support and build. How is it that we support and build each other, ourselves, communities? How is it that we actually do that? Our theme next week is support and build. I just wanted to mention something, if I might, that we're running. Actually, Leigh, you might say this more beautifully than me. We want to invite everybody to a special retreat that we're holding on Saturday, the 6th of June. Leigh, I wonder if you might say a word about it. But the thing that Leigh probably won't say is that, I will say, is that the mini retreat that we're holding, Leigh and, you may have heard it on the last call, Leigh and Justin, because of the goodness of their hearts, they're wanting to build a retreat centre in South Africa. And the donations from this mini retreat that we're going to be hosting will be going to help them build this retreat centre, which work has already begun. But I want it to move from the foundation stage to that building stage because of how kind-hearted you are in all the work that you do supporting others. I'm sure people like Debs can back that up. And Debs, I know countless people probably be able to say that about you. But Leigh, I wonder if you might want to invite from your heart people to this retreat that we're going to be running on Saturday the 6th of June.
I like to be in the background, not always in the foreground. So Rasheed always puts me on the spot. But this is just, you know, we've been running soul trader retreats. I invited Rasheed a few years ago to run soul trader retreats in South Africa primarily, but we started doing that in Portugal. And since with this year, we're not able to do that, we wanted to just give everybody a taste of what beautiful retreats are all about. And it's with the Lisbon. We usually run them in Lisbon, in beautiful Lisbon. But it's just an opportunity for people to regroup, to take some space and time for themselves, to be able to connect to some stillness, because I really deeply believe that we can only work from a place of stillness. I always see it sort of as the eye in the storm. You know, all the chaos is happening around us, and we just need to come back to the foundation, to the basic goodness, to the basic heart, just to reconnect to yourself, because there's so much going on. And at the same time, coupled with that, with having a session with Rasheed, where we're working on focus, on clarity, there's such a lot going on. Everybody's quite overwhelmed. I think there's a sense of, you know, we've been in lockdown or in in inner space for a long time, but there's a lot coming up. There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of potential for people, but how do we align that? How do we get to some clarity? And Rasheed's really, really excellent at helping people to have clarity. So just to work on 1 or 2 or 3 points that people really need to work on. So this balance of stillness and action. And that's what we're presenting with Rasheed's very generous support. And I just have utter respect for Rasheed. He's a true man of word and action meets together. So
it's really kind. It's really kind. I think the last words today will go to you. It's going to be one word. I'm going to invite everyone to just share a word, and the link for that is in the dialogue box. But I wonder, I wonder if you would all be just happy to just audibly share the one word that you're going to take away from today. But I just want to say, before we do that, I just want to just applaud all of you for the magical work that you all do. You're all really incredible people doing such incredible work supporting others. So I want to dedicate next week, yes, sure, to everybody, but it's also to you. So this theme around support, I want to explore how do we support and build, but how do we support and build generally, but also for yourselves? What's the support that you're wanting? So it's going to have a workshop style. I'm really keen for you all individually to get some rich value from this, so that you're able to move forward and to be resourceful in the amazing work that you're doing or where you're at personally. Because very often, like somebody had said earlier on, we don't often ask when we need help, or those people who are helping others often may not get the support that we have. But I know that between us, we're incredibly resourceful. So I'm going to invite each person to just share one word that they're going to take away. Aline, just one word that you're going to take away. Your one word, please. If you want to unmute and just share it. I'm going to get to say it audibly because I want to hear your wonderful voices. So if you want to unmute, Aline, I'm going to turn to Frank whilst Aline's unmuting.
Awareness.
Wonderful. Aline, your one word to take away?
Aline, not me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, evolving and also sharing more.
Wonderful. Iris, your word to take away?
Well, I took the inspiration from Rob. I think that the idea of innovation, if you know how to exclude and exclude, if you do that right, you can get into innovation.
Love it. Aleksandra?
I take it from Leigh, love and acceptance.
Wonderful. Dr. Martin?
Consciousness.
Love it. Love it. Dan, my new friend. Danny.
Yeah, I was going to say an inspiration from Rob there as well in involving, but also openness. Because somebody else already mentioned that, I'm going to just throw out openness.
Beautiful word. Rob?
Love.
Leah Morris?
Respect.
Love it. Debs?
I think for me, I'm going to have to go for the power of sharing.
Love it. Leigh?
Kindness.
Love it. Beverley?
Self-compassion.
Love it.
Initially, I was going to say acceptance, but since we've had that already, I'm going to go with honesty.
Love it. Last word, I'm going to read from my very, very dear friend Marcus, who couldn't make it here. He passed me this very short thing, which is written by Rumi, The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning is a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, and entertain them all. Even if you are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out from some new delight, the dark, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be graceful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. I just want to thank you all for just being the magical people that you are. Thank you, and see you all hopefully next week, same time.
And just to say happy birthday to Rasheed, whenever it is or was.
Next month.
It's next month. I'm not going to tell you the date, but it's a great...
Don't worry, I'll find out.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. All right, then. See you all soon, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Rasheed. Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Lovely.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rasheed.
Thank you so much. Oh, Debs, by
Thanks,
the way,
Leigh.
Debs, so by the way, we're going to find a time to interview you. So Leigh will arrange that.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for this beautiful experience.
Brilliant. Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you.
And Dan, I know we need to find time at some point for us to next chat also. We'll do that. Love that song. Love it. Oh, Rob. That song.
I think.
Rob, that song's got one of my favourite lines in it. One of my favourite lines of all time. Don't let them fool you or even try to school you. I love that line.
I think I'm ready to nominate Rob as our DJ for the Wednesday sessions.
Yeah, Dan will have to get you to sing for us. You have to perform. Bring your guitar. And Dr. Martin also. This is the after party. The after party. Love it. We'll have to do that. We'll have to have, you know what we'll have to do? We'll have to do one of these weeks, the compassion check-in after party, or we'll do that maybe, Leigh, after our retreat. After the retreat, we did, for those of you still here, when we did our Soul Trader retreats, on our final day, right, because it was this retreat and it was, serious. And at the end, the last day, there was dancing, there was music, it was lovely. So we'll have to have like...
Only if you dance, Rasheed, only if you dance, you've got the moves. You've got the moves.
And sing for us, Rasheed.
Huh?
Show us your new material, Rasheed.
There's a new video coming out soon.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah, maybe it's an opportunity to share some of it with us.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm looking for it. I'm looking forward to it. So good to see you all here. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. And,
thank you, Rasheed.
Yeah. So, yeah, Dan, drop me a line and we'll arrange that time to catch up.
Okay. Shall I do that in 5-10 minutes or?
Yeah, that would be wicked. Yeah. That would be wicked. Yeah. And Deb's, really good to meet you. What we'll do is, I think it'll be great to interview you on my, I do some interviews on my Soul Trader YouTube channel of different people.
Okay.
It'd be good to maybe just interview you about you, the work you're doing,
okay,
etc. But I'll have a chat with Leigh just so I learn a little
Lovely.
bit. And then we'll
okay. All right, if you need me to send through, but yeah, Leigh can just let me know if she needs me to send through any more info or just background. It might help just for preparation purposes.
That sounds really, really good. And then you're going to be joining us. Are you going to be joining us for the retreat on the 6th of?
I will indeed on Saturday.
Special guest.
Oh, you guys make me feel so special.
You are special. You are special.
Beautiful.
Time to shine.
and so Debs, actually, you know what? Do you both have literally just 10 minutes?
Yeah, I've got 10 minutes.
I do. Is it okay for you, Debs?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks, Leigh. All good.